Hey, peace everyone. What's up? This is Clark. I'm continuing my series Behind the Great Wall. Even though right now I'm not behind the Great Wall. I'm actually in Hong Kong. So tomorrow I'm going to be heading to China, back to China. Um, so I thought I would make a video about a subject that I think is relative and I think it's important for travelers, not just people who are of African descent, but people who are travelers in general. So I'm going to touch on a few things, and that is the language of the world um, and intuition. Having a limited language, being somewhat illiterate in another country because I hadn't mastered the Chinese language. I found that intuition, and the language of the world has been more central. Understanding people and their nature has been central. And what I mean by that is there's an author by the name of Paul Coelho, and he has a book called The Alchemist. And I recommended everybody who travels, especially men, everybody who travels, whether any country you go to, this book, you should get this book, The Alchemist, because it's one about self-discovery. And hopefully you'll be able to learn some things about yourself while you're traveling. That's just my personal opinion, The Alchemist. And it's about self-discovery. And I found that intuition during my travels over the last few months, especially in China, reading people and listening to um, the positive things that are listening to listening to something in my mind, not trusting someone's nature or being, there's a certain vibe that we all have in this world, and I think it's kind of a universal vibe. I've had people translate for me in Chinese, and I've had Chinese people say that they trusted me because of the vibe that they would get from me, or there's just like the essence they got from me, as opposed to other people. So it leads to a subject because I'm talking about this because it's important because as a traveler, the language that you learn in whatever country you go to, it's a portion of the culture. It's not the culture itself. So you may learn a language doesn't mean you know the people. All right. But having that being said, I wanted to get into this and like the language of the world. But as you travel, and this is just my uh, one of the benefits of traveling is that you learn a lot about areas that you have to work on. And for me, like I said, when I went to Rio, when I was in Rio de Janeiro, all of my faults were amplified. Or all my problems, all the things, the personal flaws that I had as a person were amplified. They were magnified in another country. And here, my experiences here in China, I have had to say the same thing. Like I have different things that I'm working on, but while I'm traveling, I'm learning. So like, even though I mentioned that my stay in Beijing wasn't horrible, it's just not. I don't think that that's the kind of place I want to be long term. There's people that I know who like Beijing. There's people I know who've been there for several years, 3 or 4 years. They make it work for them. Usually there's kind of a financial agenda. If they're not in school, there's a financial agenda there. And there's a financial reason why they're there. That's just my personal experience with people in Beijing. But what I'm trying to say, and it's not about China, but what I'm trying to say is, so as you are working, like as you're traveling, you're gonna have difficulties, but traveling is a good opportunity to work on yourself. Work on yourself as when I got back from Brazil, brother, a talented young brother. Well, actually, I had the pleasure of working with a brother named by the name of Vince. He's a graphic designer. He put me in contact with, he put me up on Tariq Nasheed. And Tariq Nasheed is talking about, especially for men who are of African descent, quote unquote black men, but African men. This is good, this brother really got himself together, and a lot of what he talks about is, interacting, have relationships with women. But more so, what he's talking about is refining yourself and being a better man. And when I started listening to him, I started listening to a lot of quote unquote men who were kind of his peers, who kind of had similar messages, and a lot of these guys were Caucasian, and I found myself gravitating to some of them more so than Tariq Nasheed. It's not that he was bad, but it's more like there's certain guys like this guy named David D'Angelo, and another gentleman by the name of Carlos Zuma. They have some really potent material about refinement and manhood. And the reason I mention them is because I thought that my thinking was that European men or quote unquote white guys who are living in the United States, they have things easy, don't have any problems, don't have any issues. And as I started doing a lot of research, I realized that they're having their own sets of problems because honestly, and this is not to, I don't have everything mastered in terms of male-female relationships in the United States, but there's a lack of masculinity in the United States. And all women are saying this. They're saying a good man is hard to find, right? And because there's a lack of masculinity. So one of the things that I think, especially with men who are African descent, we still have to work and refine ourselves. And I'm included in this just like you. There has to be a period of refinement. I worked with a brother years ago, mid '90s, and he used to be a musician. And he said he felt like somehow this was back when I did a lot of computer work, and he said he wanted to go into the shed. He used to be a musician, and the musician would take their instrument and go into a shed and just stay away from everybody for a while and work on themselves, work on mastering a particular note or whatever, or just become a better musician and work on his craft. And traveling as a man, I think you have that opportunity. Like I don't know what personality flaws you may have. Maybe you have a bad temper. Maybe you're violent. Maybe you're shy. Whatever it is, that is what you should be working on while you're traveling. Because if you are a loser in New York City, and when you go to Rio de Janeiro, you're still going to be a loser. If you are a loser in Boston and you go to Shanghai, you're still going to be a motherfucking loser. The language of the world is the women there they're going to move different, they look different, but they're going to still sense that you're still a loser. Now, what happens is a lot of us see European dudes traveling and them getting away with a lot of stuff. Maybe they can be a loser and go somewhere and they'll have it easier for themselves. But a lot of that is like I saw a lot of that in China, and I was a little bit bitter. I was like, man, look at these guys over here. They're coming over here. They're like losers, but what's happening is a lot of the women globally are waking up, and a lot of these guys are getting outed in articles. Just last year, there was a European journalist, her name Nikki Aaron. She wrote about her experience of being a female expat in Asia and the quality of men being horrible. She talked about her having to settle, the quality of expat men were horrible because most of the guys she said they were losers. Um, Same thing in Chinese women have been stepping forward, outing a lot of the guys as well. So what I'm trying to say is that don't look for an oasis where you just don't have to improve yourself. Even before I came out to China, I was working on these different programs, trying to refine myself, and I noticed that as I really refine myself and improve myself, personally, honest with you, man, I was dating women of all ethnic groups. The women were there because once you start to refine yourself, they're just gonna be there's an abundance of women, actually. So this is more about traveling and the language of the world, and that's more universal. You being a good person, being a good man, universally, and when that happens, so use travel as an instrument and as a time period for refinement as well. All right, peace.